welcome to First Comes Love, Then Comes Marriage podcast. My name is Lindsay Jackson.
And I'm Aaron Jackson.
And we are so excited that everyone is here joining us because we have the Dr. Maura Jones in the house with us. And she's going to give us the rundown on all things pregnancy and labor and OB and just guide us through what we need to know as we go into the next stages of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Bringing life into the relationship.
Okay, this is happening. So I'm really excited. Thank you, Dr. Maura, for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, okay. So we always like to start with your love story, share with us if you can.
Oh God. Yeah. So my husband and I went to college at Xavier University, which is in Louisiana. It's in New Orleans. And that's where my husband and I met. He was a second year pharmacy student at the time, and I was like a rising senior undergrad. I was pre-med. And so we met at Spring Fest, which is like the HBCU version of like the spring homecoming. And so one of my friends is barbecuing on the yard. And you know how it is at HBCU, like as soon as the meat comes off the grill, like it's immediately gone. And so I told him, I was like, I have to run just to talk to one of the deans about this event really quickly, but like, please, this hot dog on the grill is my hot dog. Like, please don't let anyone have it. I'll be gone for 2 minutes. I left for literally that kitchen at like 3 minutes. I come back, the grill is empty.
Oh my gosh.
Come up, my hot dog is gone. So I look over and I see this guy in this Alpha by Alpha t-shirt eating a hot dog. So I approached him and I was like, excuse me, is that my hot dog that you're eating? And he was like, I'm sorry, what? And I was like, that hot dog, like, is that from the grill? That's my hot dog. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm sorry, do I know you? Do you go here? Because like our campus was like very open campus in the middle of the city. So people who were like Greek but from other schools would just come and hang out on our campus. So I was like, I've never seen you before. Like, did you go here? And he was like, yeah, I'm a pharmacy student. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm Maura. It's nice to meet you. And he was kind of looking at me like, who's this crazy girl? So anyway, I thought he was cute. So I texted one of my friends who's also in pharmacy school. And I was like, I met this guy. He's got a strong accent. I've never seen him before. He says he's in pharmacy school. Like, who is it? He's like, oh, it has to be Derek. Da, 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 da. So I added him on Facebook. And then the same day he sends me a message and he's like, oh, my stalker found me on Facebook or whatever.
Oh, no.
He's like, my accuser found me on Facebook. And so he messaged back and forth and I gave him my number. And he never texted me. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Yikes. So anyway, the rest of the year goes on. I go on to my senior year. I work in the library that year. He's always in the library studying. So he always sees me. He says hi. We chat. He hugs me. We're like, I'm just like telling him my whole life story about how I'm figuring out what med school I'm going to go to. But he still like never texted me or never asked me out or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I graduate from undergrad. I had this boyfriend that I was like kind of on again, off again with. So anyway, we're like back together, not together. Anyway, so I graduate, I go to med school. I'm like, finished my first semester of med school, like sitting in the lobby, and Derek walks by in the lobby and he's like, is that Maura? And I was like, oh, hey, Derek. And he would talk for a little bit. And then he sends me a message on Facebook and he was like, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm praying for you and then you have a great, like successful first year of med school, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the whole spring semester, I just keep running into him around campus in the city of New Orleans at the pharmacy where he works, like just random things like keep bringing us together. And so then finally he asked me on a date. And that's kind of it. But then I asked him, I was like, I gave you my number and you never hit me up. Like, why was that? And he was like, oh, I asked around and he said you had a boyfriend. And so I didn't want to be.
Wow.
Oh, good for him.
Wow.
Good for him. He was like, I'm not about to put myself in a situation.
He was trying to be out the drama, but he was like clearly lurking me on Facebook because he like texted me like one time after I like posted some status. You know how it is.
Yeah,
like,
it's complicated.
Like, oh, it's complicated or whatever. So clearly he was lurking on my Facebook.
Oh my, yeah, he knew, but he was like respectful a little bit. He said, okay, let me wait till it's my time.
He hit you with the, I'm praying for you though.
Right, praying for you. Right. But I think about it all the time because like, if I would have started dating him when I was in college, it probably wouldn't have worked out because I was just so immature and like I really needed that time to like mature and like come into like how I communicate and like handle conflict. I really just needed time to like figure that out. And so I think that when we did finally get together, it was like really the perfect timing because I was like, just a much more mature and like better person and ready to handle like a relationship that was going to lead to marriage.
Yeah.
God's timing.
Wow. We talked about this before. Timing, God's timing. Timing is key. And so, speaking of timing, we're talking about the timing of growing a family right now. And okay, tell us your official title first.
So I'm a maternal medicine fellow. So that means I've done 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school. I did a 4-year OBGYN residency at UCSF, and now I'm doing a 3-year fellowship in high risk pregnancy at UNC Chapel Hill. So I could go out into the world right now and practice as a general OBGYN. And I do practice as a general OBGYN kind of on labor and delivery at UNC, but I'm still getting some additional training to just be like a high risk pregnancy expert.
Okay. And so with all of that, I know you have seen so much.
Man.
And we want to talk about it. We want to talk about it specifically in the Black field as well, Black women, Black maternal health. But the first question that I would ask is, what should people know prior to getting pregnant about pregnancy or labor and delivery? What would you say they should know?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that people should know is that you should try your hardest to enter pregnancy as your healthiest state, your really healthiest state, physically, mentally, and relationship wise, support wise. But I think a lot of people, 50% of pregnancies are unplanned, and that's just the nature of life. But when we can plan for pregnancy, we really should try to make sure we optimize our health in all the ways possible. So I would say a lot of complications that I see in pregnancy, some of them are preventable and they can be prevented if people are a little bit more healthier coming into the pregnancy. So if you know that you need to lose a little bit of weight, losing the weight before you get pregnant would be super helpful on your pregnancy outcomes. High blood pressure, getting your pressure under control, exercising, low salt diet, starting a medication if you need it. Diabetes is another one where I'm if you could just get your diabetes under control, you would have a smooth pregnancy. Many ways that people can optimize their cells before they get pregnant that really can help them have a smoother, more healthy pregnancy. But I think weight loss is probably the main one. Because obesity really does lead to so many bad pregnancy outcomes. And then a lot of people just don't know that preconception visits exist. So if you're thinking about getting pregnant, you can come and see one of your OBGYNs and we can talk to you about your health and kind of individualize your plan, what you should do before you get pregnant, starting a vitamin, getting on a good exercise plan, getting all your vaccinations, getting some blood work to see if you carry certain diseases that you can carry on, you could pass them to your baby, things like that.
And with that, do you think the relationships with family members and knowing the family history, oh, my mom, she had complications during pregnancy, or my sisters, they had whatever it was, preeclampsia, they had something like that. How important is that to know your family's history about how they got pregnant? Because a lot of times, and where we grew up, our parents didn't really talk about their pregnancies. It was just oh yeah, we were born, so we have 2 sons right now, but it's always it's brand new because that experience is I don't know about my mom's medical history when it came to pregnancy and stuff.
Yeah, I think that most commonly comes up actually when we find an anomaly on an ultrasound or something in the genetic testing comes back weird. We're oh, well, let's sit down and talk about your family history. And people are what? We're has anyone ever had a miscarriage? Does anyone have a learning disability in your family? Does anyone have this? And people are just kind of dumbstruck. So I think in those situations where things run in the family and people don't know about it, those are the situations where it often comes up the most. It's when we find some abnormal lab or something weird on the ultrasound. We have to kind of dig back to the family history. But I would say most people generally know the major things, they have a cousin with Down syndrome, or if they have cousins that have heart defects, or there are a lot of miscarriages in the family. Those things generally come up when we're getting those histories. A lot of people do kind of sort of talk about their parents' birth history, oh, my mom had high blood pressure when she was pregnant, or mom had a preterm delivery. And some of those things are really relevant because preterm birth, there probably is a genetic component to that. And so it's good to know as much as you can about your family's pregnancy history and health history kind of going into your pregnancy. But I'm always just shocked at like how little people actually know about like their own health history.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I feel like nowadays, at least in the profession that I am in, people are having babies later. And
Yeah,
so
for
then there's
sure.
a bigger gap between, say, my generation and then their parents, because our parents had us when we were extreme, when they were young,
Right.
right? But then we're having our babies when we're a little older in our 30s. And so then they really don't remember, right? They're just like, what? That was, 5 decades, even more decades ago. So it's harder to kind of recall
Those
issues
details.
because, yeah, you're on the other side of it. You're on the so far other side of it. But what would you say to couples to help them to, say, advocate? I want to talk about the delivery room, maybe that labor process, or even actually, let me go back, pregnancy visits in general. Um, how do they talk to the doctor? How do they speak to advocate for themselves while they're going along the journey?
Yeah. So I think, like people often talk about like doula support in labor, but I actually think the doula support is actually probably more important during the prenatal care time because they really can hone in on those things that we don't always pick up on in a short visit and remind you to bring them up in the visit with us. A lot of people, have questions, have concerns, and then as soon as they get in front of me, they forget everything they thought they were going to ask. And so I always encourage people to like keep a running list on their phone. And I'm like, pull your list out, like just pull it up. We'll look through it together. It's not a big deal. Then you have like a 20 question notepad in front of you. That's perfect for us to address. And I think that's why I think that, like having a doula or someone who really can jog your memory in your prenatal care really is important, or even like a support person. I think it's so hard when it's like your partner, your husband, your spouse, because like you really want, ideally, I want you and your spouse to just be like the patients or like the people, the birthing parents, and not have to worry so much about all the medical things and what to ask. And so that's why it's kind of nice to have an extra person there who can help kind of like jog your memory, help you remember questions. Um, I think that writing questions down, if people are ever feeling like they're like not being heard, something that always kind of like sticks out to me or like makes me pause when someone says, well, I'm worried about, or I'm concerned that, those words always kind of like catch my ear. I'm like, oh, okay, like let's talk about this a little bit more. Like why are you concerned about this? Why is this worrying you? What questions do you have? How can I reassure you? And so those are kind of always the key words that I kind of listen for, and people are saying, like, but generally, like I try my best, and I think that everyone tries to listen to people without them saying those words, because I can just pick up on body language. People seem worried or they seem like stressed about something. I try to make sure that I address it in our visits, but I think those are the key words. And then I think that whenever people are feeling like they're not being heard or like their provider's not listening to them, it's never a bad idea to like ask to speak to someone else, or ask for a second opinion, or ask to talk to someone else, because I have friends who are in healthcare themselves, and even they are like, I brought this up, but no one said anything about it. And I'm like, huh, that's concerning to me. Like, bring it up again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I and with that, one of the things that I went through during every pregnancy journey that we had is the not knowing information. Basically, is kind
Yeah.
of like you're the expert, I'm not the expert, and every time I research,
Oh, goodness.
it just leads to horrible things, right? And so for I'm not a woman, so I can't have children. So when I think about like just little things, what differentiates just like a first trimester like symptom of being trimester or a symptom of something else? Because it seems like there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, a lot
And
of, oh my
so
goodness.
so it's very difficult. Is it like what's your rule of thumb when it comes to that, where it's just like, oh, I have a headache, but they say in the research that I looked online, headaches are usual. or oh, I have like, anything like that. So how do you weed through the research to know when like, oh, it's time to talk to a medical professional?
Yeah, I so funny that you asked that because one of my friends was just saying that like she had some swelling and some dizziness, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's normal," but then she checked her blood pressure and it was high, and I was like, "Well," and she's like, "This is not normal," and so that's why she knew that it was not normal. But she had told her doctor about it. They're like, "Oh, it's normal, to have those things and you're pregnant." But it's true, there is so much overlap, and a lot of the symptoms are so subjective, particularly for things like preeclampsia. Like, do you have a headache? Do you have vision changes? Do you have pain in your right upper quadrant? Like, some of those things are subjective. Like, people are like, oh yeah, I do have a headache. I'm like, but is it the worst headache you've ever had? Like, does it go with Tylenol? Like, because sometimes the headache is like, I'm going to deliver you because you have preeclampsia and you have a headache, or it's just a headache. It's just hard to know sometimes. And so I generally tell people in the first trimester is the only thing that really bothers me in the first trimester is like, you can't keep down food and water, and you're having any kind of bleeding, any kind of vaginal bleeding. Those are things that I want to hear about. Cramping, bleeding, or like terribly nauseous, vomiting, not holding down food or water for long periods of times. I think once we get more into the third trimester, that's when I start worrying about headaches, like changes in the vision, swelling. Those are all can be signs of preeclampsia, and I don't want to miss that. And so I really try to make sure that everyone that I see has a blood pressure cuff at home, because if you're ever feeling off, one thing that you can do to reassure yourself is like just check your blood pressure. If it's high, or if it's like creeping up above, like, high for you, like 140s, 150s, that's definitely a reason to give us a call. Because preeclampsia kind of can like sneak up on you, and it can mimic a lot of other things that are normal pregnancy symptoms, like having a headache. Anything that's persistent, like you've had a headache, you hydrate, it goes away, fine. I don't really need to hear about that. But you have a headache every single day, like that's weird. I want to hear about that. So I would say like things that are persistent that are not getting better with like Tylenol and hydration are things that I definitely for sure want to hear about. And then kind of those warning signs to tell everyone about like cramping, bleeding, loss of fluid, like your water broke, not feeling your baby move, or like persistent headache. But you're right, there's so much overlap, even swelling, like swelling of the feet and ankles, that's normal. Like your rings, not being able to wear your rings, that's normal. But like swelling up to your knees and like in your thighs, like that's not normal.
Mm. Yeah. And the thing is like people say it's normal, even like I'm swelling it, and I would talk to my friends or my sisters or stuff like that, and the default is that's a normal thing. They hear about swelling, but
Yeah. And there's such a wide range. There's a gamut. Like, I mean, you're in high risk now, which is so wonderful. I feel like all doctors should just be high risk doctors, because it's a high risk situation, right? This is a situation where it's like anything can happen. So why don't we all just know about it? I think like with us, even, and we've shared our story, no one told us about the blood pressure cuff. That's like so crucial for pregnancy, period. Like you're sharing with us, that is like, I'm an athlete, so my tolerance for pain is higher. So yeah. I might not tell a doctor if I have a headache or if I'm in pain because I'm used to that. But having that say, okay, well, we just want you to take your blood pressure. We just want you to pay attention to this, like telling all patients that, regardless of if they are high risk or not, is really valuable. I feel like as a woman, as someone who's experienced it.
Yeah, and the crazy part about it all is that like most insurances actually don't cover the cuffs, so like you have to rely on patients to be able to one, pay for them themselves, or like we occasionally will get some grant funding and we're able to like give them out. But yeah, I think that hypertension in pregnancy is like the scariest thing.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of a cuff versus the cost of hospital stays is like, we could we could figure that out.
Yeah.
But what you wanted to ask something else about advocating in the room or did you?
Oh,
yeah.
Advocating in a room? I don't remember, but I do kind of have a question about advocating in a room.
Yeah.
As a doctor, how do you feel? Because sometimes I feel like almost like with a teacher or anything like that, it's like I don't want to ask a stupid question, or I don't want to go to another person and then you find out as a doctor that I went to another doctor because I didn't really like the interaction between us. So how important is it for a doctor or for anybody to feel comfortable with their doctor, or how important is it for a doctor to see not just the person as like, oh, this is a present person, but like seeing the person like, this is Lindsay, or this is Aaron, this is this family, this is this family.
A lot of patience.
Yeah, because I can see, do doctors take it personally because we don't know, and so there is a lot of frustration with us being incompetent and you having all the knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't expect anyone to know what I know. Like, it took me like 12 years to acquire this knowledge, so there's like no specific question, which is why I hesitate to be like, oh, this is normal, because I really want people, if they have a concern, to just ask me and let me tell them that it's normal, because I don't want them to hear that, to just assume that it's normal because they read it online or they talk to someone and then not tell me about it. And then I'm like, oh, all along you've had like this thing going on and you didn't think to tell me about it. Like, this patient I had was taking this medication for her whole third trimester that she really shouldn't have been taking, and she didn't tell me because she thought she read online that it was fine. I was like, bro, that's not fine.
Oh no.
So I never want to be like, oh yeah, like I don't want to ask a question because it's dumb. Like, no, for sure. Ask me. And if you ever feel like you're not comfortable with your provider, like just switch, like ask for a new one. I know that sometimes feels like easier said than done, particularly when you're like, are like beholden to like Medicaid or Medicare or some other insurance where you just can't pick who you see and you're kind of just like assigned to a certain clinic. But I feel like if you don't feel comfortable getting your pregnancy care with someone, you should really just switch, because if you don't have that trust with that person, then you're not going to be able to get the best care.
But here's a question that I asked, because you brought it up and you were saying if you are first time pregnancy in Black and you know you're a Black doctor, so you have certain things on your radar just by your identity. Do you suggest women seek out certain providers based off of, because all the providers that we've had, all of my OBs have actually been white women, Jewish women, and they did not think to talk about the aspirin or the blood pressure or anything like that.
No, we forced the issue after
nothing
that.
was on the radar. Even after, I was like, hey, this is what has happened to me. What if we do things differently this time? They were like, well, your history is other than that, right? Because other than that, I'm a perfect specimen, right?
Yes, you are.
So it's like, okay, how important is it to choose the right provider? And then how do you suggest people go about that?
Yeah, so I have a couple of friends, as you can imagine, who are OBGYNs, and the ones who are white tell me that they have had Black patients ask them, like, you know, like, what are your thoughts on the maternal mortality crisis in the country right now, how that impacts Black women, and what are you doing to make a difference in that sphere? That's a great kind of like screening question for any OBGYN or any provider, midwife that you're going to see as a Black woman and you're worried about, like, if they're going to be in tune with specific, you know, disparities and how they impact the birthing experience and the outcomes in Black women. And so a lot of my friends have actually, like, they know about this and they have great answers to these questions. They're doing a lot of work in this field, even though they're not Black people. But now they're just like, sometimes they're like, you know what? I have a partner who's Black, and if you want, I can schedule you to see her with your next visit. And I'm like, yeah, send them my way. And so I think that's just like a really good question to kind of ask and to kind of bring up to your provider at your first visit. And if they like can't give you a good answer, then like who else in your practice do you think I should see that might be a better fit? A lot of people honestly will just look us up, because I have my co-fellow also is a Black woman, and it's us two, and then we have one other partner who's a Black man. But they'll just like Google us and then they'll just schedule appointments with us. But unfortunately, because it's just us two, like, you know, we're always so booked. And so I'm always like, we just need more Black doctors, more Black midwives, more Black everybody. Like, honestly, I think my practice needs right now was a Black, like, midwife or nurse practitioner who I can collaborate with, who can do a lot of the like, because a lot of my patients that I see, they're high risk, but like I don't have to see them at every single visit for a high risk issue. And a lot of what they need too is just like some low risk kind of like normal care. And so I think that we could definitely improve access if I had like someone working with me who could do some of that low risk kind of like care while I focus on the high risk stuff, and like maybe see them every other visit so I could see more patients overall. And so like in my dream world, that's what my practice will look like. And I have a sister who actually is in nurse practitioner school right now. And so I'm hoping that like when he finishes, her and I can, open up I can have a little practice together.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
I definitely think there's nothing wrong with like trying to see a provider who looks like you. Because even the way that I talk to my patients who are Black is just different. Because like we just, culturally it's just different. Like I'm like, girl, why are you playing? Like, what are you doing? Take your medication.
Yes. Yeah.
I talk to my Black, because I know that it's culturally that it's just different, and they can handle kind of like more of like my like tough love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, girl, what are you doing right now? Like, why are you playing games? Like, take the aspirin.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this has been wonderful. Okay, did you have any other questions before I ask the?
Oh no, we're good. We got the jewel question.
Yes.
Okay.
We want to ask you. This is how we close it every time. Is what's one jewel that you could share with a couple or a woman that would help smooth into this next transition in their life?
One jewel. I would say trust your instincts. I feel like I tell everyone this, like I have of course like studied for a million years, but at the end of the day, you are the expert on you, and you know your body, and you know like what is not normal, what feels off. And so if at any time like something feels off or not right, trust your gut, trust your instinct, and know that you are right and you're the expert on your body, and you tell me. I think that's like my general rule for like life and like pregnancy. I'm like, you are the expert in yourself. And so I can tell you over and over again, it's fine. But like, if you know that it's not fine, then it's not fine.
And they should either see you again and again or go over your head, and they know it's not fine. Yeah. Exactly. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
This has been so
fun. I was like so nervous about this, but it's actually fine.
Oh, no, it's great. You have the knowledge.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, what are they going to ask me?
Oh, wow. If people wanted to ask you specific questions, like if they drop it in the comments,
they in Durham, yeah.
How would they reach you? What's your handle?
Yeah. So my name on Instagram is Mocha in Medicine.
Okay, perfect. And they're gonna say, Dr. Jones, I have more questions for you.
Occasionally, I'll do like a little like ask me anything, like on my Instagram. And pretty soon I'm gonna try to like do a little bit more educational stuff on my page for people. So I know that's like people want that content. So
I mean, we want it. This was a great interview.
Absolutely.
You have so much knowledge, and we just appreciate you taking out your time and talking with us and answering our questions.
Thank you. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much. And if you have anything you want to share, as always, reach out to us on DM, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. First Comes Love, TCM.
You could call our voicemail line at 412-LOVE-POD. That's 412-568-3763.
Or you can email us, let's talk at firstcomeslove, then comes marriage.com.
See you next Friday.